spiritual. And just about any other name that isn't ethnic, that isn't spiritual, or that isn't coming from the inner city or the black community type would be considered not black, or quite frankly, white. So there are some black mothers who will go to no end to make sure their son is positively identified by their race, by their color, by their culture at no cost. They're not thinking about the future. They're thinking about, look, this is my son. I'd rather name him Trayvon than Terry, or I'd rather name him DeMonte instead of Derek, what have you. It's their choice. It's their child. And this is why you have the discrepancy in names, and it's probably a discrepancy in mentality and class. Because when you look at these names, now there are a lot of black athletes and black cadets in these military academies. And I did through the research, and they are not named Devontae and LaMarcus and Dontrell and Kentavious. They're not. You may have very, very few. There are always going to be exceptions. But this comes from the position and the mentality of the parents of the Air Force, West Point, and Naval Academy sons and daughters that they have. Because in many cases, like I mentioned before, the 93 or 94%, that they are making a joint decision in a lot of cases with the names of their sons. It is not a one-way street to where, or black women for Division I schools that are not part of the military academy family, they are making these decisions on their own or off some type of a book or something on the internet they have equated and tried to match that with something they feel that is spiritual or something that fits their need or narrative. Another thing I noticed, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I'm a journalist and I look for news stories. I am a junkie when it comes to current events, hot button topics, things of that nature. So I am constantly reading and following news stories just like I do. And I noticed that when I would look at crime, when I would see news reports of certain crimes, major crimes, because those are the ones that are getting the most reps on social media and the mainstream media. We're talking about murder, rape, carjackings, home invasions, things like that. And I noticed that when they would apprehend the suspect, more times than not, and when I say more times than not, I'm being generous. I'm not talking about 51-49 or 55-45 or 60-40 even. I'm talking somewhere around 85-15, 88-12. More times than not, these guys have one of these names. What does that mean? Does it mean you're coming from that type of environment because you're named that and it's a coincidence, or is it just par for the course because you are finding a lot of these names that I've mentioned that are going down this particular road?
Well, this is an alternate juror we're talking about, and the conversation she said she overheard was between another juror and an Orange County Sheriff's deputy. She said they were talking about gun laws. Now, this happened as Markeith Lloyd took the stand in his own defense today. He was talking about guns, and he was also claiming self-defense.
Well, I never meant for this to happen. I wanted my child.
Markeith Lloyd says all he wanted to do on the night of December 13th, 2016 was talk to his ex-girlfriend, Sade Dixon, not to kill her. Investigators say Dixon, who was pregnant, was shot and killed in front of her home that night after Lloyd arrived armed with a gun, and an argument with him boiled over.
Mr. Markeith Lloyd, ladies and gentlemen, Markeith. And this was a situation just happened a year or so ago, a couple of years ago, when I first started to realize the trend of these names. Now, come on, please stay with me here, ladies and gentlemen. These are examples, right? But, not every single one of these crimes are committed by, Zentavius and Quantavius. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to offer you another side of point. Now, like I said earlier, there is a majority here, a vast majority, a high majority. But I don't want you to think that it's like a 99 and 44/100% of the time. Okay, so this dude here, this cat, Markeith Lloyd, drove up to a Walmart. This is in Florida, the state of Florida, and he was seeking his pregnant girlfriend who was pregnant from him by all accounts. And they had some other kind of dispute, obviously. So he goes to the Walmart and shoots her dead, and of course she loses her child. Well, the local police were dispatched. She was a black woman, by the way. Local police were dispatched, and one of the persons on charge at the scene was a black female officer, lieutenant type, and she responded, and the chase was on. And Markeith Lloyd ran, of course, fled, armed, putting people's lives in danger. But he was subsequently caught very short time later. But in the pursuit and in the, the non-willing to go in peaceably, he shot and killed that black female lieutenant police officer. And then they took him into custody without killing him. Hint, hint. So as a kind of like a symbol of, they got you, or a symbol of, this is just karma, the handcuffs of that black police officer, the female black police officer, I have her name, and I should have written it down to give you her name, because give her that much respect that she deserves, serving her community and her country for that matter, to be shot down by a thug. Well, they used her handcuffs. They took the handcuffs off her poor deceased body and locked it up on Markeith Lloyd and drug him in. And of course, what do most of them do when they're being drug in or they're being apprehended, trying to be brought in peaceably? They fight and resist. So guess what happened to Markeith Lloyd? A couple of officers, well, let's just say, gave him a little taste of the sauce, kind of roughed him up a little bit, almost punched his eye out. Now, I'm not saying, what happened, whether it was right or wrong, he was fighting, okay? Now, as angry as they were for taking out one of their own, just stupidly, they probably felt they had the right to rough him up, but they didn't, only on the count that he was fighting back. So anyway, Markeith Lloyd was taken into custody, and just the other day, he was sentenced to life in prison. He tried to say he wanted to represent himself, couldn't understand English phrases and whatnot, and the judge mandated that he would be represented by legal counsel. And he was, and he's, it wasn't going to matter. I guess it was going to be the death penalty or not, or life in prison. He got life in prison. So, one less of them off the street, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, Markeith Lloyd, he was a sweetheart of a person when it came to this stuff. Like I said, and he was the first person I looked at and said, this is a trend, it's a trend, Markeith Lloyd and others. I was like, okay, now that's what it has to be. And then I heard of this other case and I said, Lintonio Watson. And I said, Lintonio. Let me look that one up. I found out what that means. Lintonio Watson.
Lintonio Watson approached the bench on the last day he would see a Montgomery County courtroom.
It's been a long, hard, and extremely sad 11 months for us.
He listened as he faced the family of Martell Gray II. He is the Dayton man Watson is convicted of shooting to death last September.
I truly wish you would have thought about how much pain you was inflicting on others while you were chasing these 3 young men down.
And then, still denying the accusations, Lintonio Watson asked the judge for leniency and forgiveness from the family.
I know deep down in my heart I'm not guilty of the charge. I'm not guilty of the crime I'm convicted of. But I was wondering if you can give me if you can show a little sympathy. And to Mook's family, I'm not the one that killed y'all's son. I know how to kill who's the loved one.
Judge Barbara P. Gorman sentenced Watson to 37 years to life in prison. After the sentencing, tension between the families in this emotional week-long trial boiled to altercations and more accusations. Outrage then over the decision spilled into the hallway outside the courtroom and then to the sidewalk. 5 people were handcuffed, then arrested, taken to jail for disorderly conduct.
So you've been hearing the news reports, the stand-ups and whatnot. So I don't really have to go over what they did. I'm just trying to establish a pattern that I realized, that I observed and came up with, and I am now presenting it on this show. Listen to this one. Gwahuru Govan. Gwahuru Govan. Now remember, a last name doesn't say anything, okay? It's that first name, ladies and gentlemen. Gwahuru? Really?
Gwahuru Govan sat at the defense table surrounded by 4 court officers. He looked straight ahead throughout his sentencing, determined to avoid the glaring, tear-filled eyes of the victim's relatives. Sharabia Thomas was just 17 years old, snatched off the street, bound and strangled on her way to school in 2004. Police later found her naked body stuffed in laundry bags in a nearby alley.
Then there was Shakur Wright. Shakur Wright. Let me give you a second to think who you think he was probably named after. I'll wait. Yeah, that's it. I was thinking of that same person.
By the time this grisly discovery was made at the Hamilton E. Holmes MARTA station in November of 2016, Shakur Wright had already killed 2 people and shot a third, according to prosecutors. But the worst allegation was found in this car.
This death sends a big message to us that we need to do something.
And last but not least on this list, ladies and gentlemen, is Zacchaeus Gaston. Zacchaeus Gaston. On this list of the names of what you want to call them, who of names of the black community who have probably been saddled with a name that they think that they may have to live up to. Or is it because they are in a position, because their parents are in a position and they're just guilty not only by association, but behind that old saying that I tried to say, but I keep forgetting later, that the pear doesn't fall close to the ocean or something like that.
Another issue in court this morning for the man accused of murdering the mother of his child and injuring their baby in a shooting.
Zacchaeus Gaston was only in front of a judge for a few minutes before he was led out of the courtroom. This is the second